This is an Eye on Annapolis special update.
This is John Pernay with Eye on Annapolis, and we are here waiting for a press conference from the city of Annapolis with Mayor Buckley, Chief Edward Jackson from the Annapolis City Police Department to announce the formation of a civilian review board for the Annapolis City Police Department. Let's get right into it.
Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, Annapolis. Over the last 2 weeks, we've watched America's response to the killing of George Floyd. People are rightfully angered over his murder at the hands of the Minneapolis police. Like many of you, I've watched these protests on my television. On multiple occasions, I've attended and spoken at protests here in our city. Last night, former President Barack Obama addressed the nation and through his Obama Foundation made a call for mayors to address police use of force policies by signing a pledge. I signed that pledge as a commitment to this community and the continuation of my journey as an elected official. We are here in Annapolis. We like to think we don't have the same problems that other cities have, but that would be naive. 3 years ago, I promised to be a mayor who would lead this city into a new era of inclusiveness, equity, diversity, and unity. 3 years ago, I also promised to support a civilian review board to promote transparency, trust, and accountability in our police department. Before I began my campaign for mayor, the Caucus of African American Leaders presented a series of recommendations concerning police reform to the city of Annapolis. On that list of recommendations was a call for body cameras for police officers. That has been fulfilled. Also on that list of recommendations was a call for an independent civilian review board. Today, we're moving in that direction. With Police Chief Ed Jackson and Senior Advisor William Rao, I would like to announce our plans to create a civilian review board in the city of Annapolis. A civilian review board can give residents a place to file complaints and have them reviewed by a body of fellow residents. For both residents and the police, it can provide transparency, promote trust, and lead to accountability. And most importantly, it can improve understanding and trust between police and residents by providing a reliable and consistent forum for complaints, resolutions, and conversations. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Police Chief Jackson.
Good afternoon. This is Ed Jackson, Chief of Police for the City of Annapolis. I think the mayor pretty much summed it up. I like to say that as a police chief, I realize that we can't do our job without the participation and involvement of the community. No successful police chief in America has been successful without the support of the community. What a civilian review board does, it bridges that gap as the mayor just spoke of. And quite frankly, I want the men and women of the Annapolis Police Department to be assured that with this civilian review board, they'll be treated with fairness. They'll be treated with the same dignity that the police department expects them to be treated. But what it does do, it adds credibility that we so sorely need with the community. I found, it's been my experience that when you have a strong civilian review board, not only do the community become advocates for better policing, they become advocates really for us and our ability to do our jobs. What it does do, I'll say lastly, is that just by virtue of being involved in the day-to-day operations of the police department, it demystifies what we do. Citizens get a better understanding of why we make the decisions that we make. And then together we can collaborate on how to make things better. And then I'll close by saying, in line with Sir Robert Peel, one of the most important points that Sir Robert Peel, who's considered the founding father of modern policing, he said as a part of his London, when he approached the London Metropolitan, when you approached Parliament and asked them to enact the London Metropolitan Police Act of 1829, he said one important thing that stuck with me my entire 40-year career in law enforcement. He said, police are the community and community are the police. And police should be drawn from the community. And so if we're really serious about community policing, if the residents really want to be partners with their community, then I think a civilian review board is a great first step in bridging that gap between police and community. When we have us against them, then it's always a losing side. What we don't want in Annapolis is an adversarial system. When you have an adversarial system, then there's wins and losses. We want all wins. So I'm here to endorse a community the community review board process and a real independent community review board to work with us to make Annapolis a safe city for all who live here and for all those who want to visit our great city to shop and enjoy this very beautiful city. So civilian review board will be a very important part of making the Annapolis Police Department the kind of police department that we all can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for those thoughtful words. It is things that we discussed in the interview process. It was one of the number one questions that came up when you beat out 100 people to be our police chief, and we were lucky enough to get you. You have lectured on this very subject. You're a guest speaker on many occasions when it comes to community policing and civilian review boards. So thank you. I'd like to hand over now to one of my trusted advisors, William Rao, who's been on the front line of guiding our decision and getting to this point. So William Rao, can I hand it over to you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Police Chief Jackson. Thank you. So the process will be, we will immediately begin developing a transparent and inclusive planning process that will be informed by community members and stakeholders, faith leaders, consultants and advisors, and most importantly, impacted people to help create the framework for a robust and effective civilian review board. Too often we learn that police officers have been involved in senseless violence as a result of being involved in high intensity areas involving crime. What we also have learned about is obviously the killing of George Floyd, and that they have had complaints of brutality or serious misconduct files against them before. We need to hold police officers accountable so that violent and sometimes racist officers are dealt with before they hurt anyone else, and also so that we're respectful for those professional officers and that they are awarded and rewarded for their reputation, and that their jobs are not harmed by working with officers who give the profession a bad name. I want to reiterate, along with some of the mayor's and Chief Jackson's statements, that this is not in any way an indictment against the Annapolis Police Department, nor is it languaging or structuring that runs counter to what we all want from our police department. The ultimate goal is of course, a partnership between the community that's served by the police department and the officers who are in the line of duty. But I also want to add that, good police in our city and elsewhere, we encourage them to be able to speak out about bad police. And good police need to stop the abuse in the moment as it happens. And that's what occurred in the George Floyd case. So what does all this mean? What this means for us is that establishing a civilian review board is not, again, the solution. It is not the ultimate solution for improving community police trust and relations. But we all believe in this city, and right now, in particular, our mayor believes that it is a step in the right direction. And He's charged with taking that step. And so that is why we are here today. So to get more into the process so that we're really clear about a lot of the questions that will arise is how we arrive at this. First, we will identify a core group of citizens who are sufficiently concerned about this issue and who are willing to unite and work together over an extended period of time. And in the matter of time, remembering that this process for a civilian review board is not an easy process, it is not a short process, but we do need concerned and involved citizens and stakeholders, including involvement from, importantly, our city council and other members who have a stake in this. So this core group will seek out training, support, and resources prior to establishing a planning or advisory committee. And this working committee will identify sources of technical assistance, such as NACOL, the Department of Justice, local bar associations, and practitioners of civilian oversight in other jurisdictions. In conversations that we've had about the semantics of civilian review, remembering that when we say oversight, that has other meanings also. So as we unpack this, what we're working with is an opportunity to explore all of the different best practices. So also what we'll do is we'll begin framing a public discussion and inviting broad public input. We want to emphasize that the purpose of improving trust between police and community is for the purpose of ensuring public confidence in the agencies through accountability and transparency. Because there is trust there, we need to build upon that. Police officials and union representatives will also be a part of the conversations from the start. It is a necessary part of that. It is also important to get input from them and make it clear to them that their suggestions and concerns are valuable. Our ultimate goal, again, remember, is to deliver the most professional, accountable, transparent, and effective police services possible to the communities that they serve. So to be clear, this is my final point, and this is for clarity for all of us. Step number one, create a working group that will study, identify best practices, and make informed recommendations about the details of a civilian review board to include scope, type, resources, membership, reach. All of those things have to be considered. Number two, using those recommendations that come from everyone, enabling legislation to be drafted. That legislation has to be drafted in accordance with city law and also in accordance with all of our city council persons and other stakeholders. Number three, legislation will hopefully pass, establishing a civilian review board. And number four, members will be elected or appointed to the board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief Jackson.
Thank you, William. So we could answer any questions if anyone has some questions from...
Yeah, Brooks at the Capitol. I guess this might be, since you're only creating a committee to basically start exploring this, it might be a little bit ahead of the game, but what will the board be reviewing? Complaints against police? Anything else beyond that?
We'll elaborate on that if you want. This is
yes, I can elaborate on it. Keeping in mind, first of all, thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. Keeping in mind that any conversation or answers in relation to the actual construct and utility of the board would be premature. And I'm not saying that in a way that kind of defends not knowing. It is that the process in and of itself has to be informed by all of the moving parts. And I think it would be irresponsible for us to assume exactly what their utility would be at this time.
So I guess if we can back up to the committee, who will choose the committee members and how will that process look? I mean, you said that they're going to be concerned and interested citizens, but how will that process start and where will you be looking?
So similar to the process that happens with boards and commissions, though they are different. The process that we use is we cast a wide net initially, and then internally what happens is decisions are made when we review their qualifications and where they come from in terms of specific issues related to police accountability. And then through that process, it will be reviewed by multiple people who will go through the process of determining if those criteria match those that are applying.
We have a lot of citizens. I think we have a lot of expertise in this city, a lot of people that want to give of their knowledge. So we think we're going to be able to form a pretty solid board to review the committee. And so we believe that process has worked for us well to date, and we're looking forward to moving it forward.
Mr. Mayor, this is John Fernay with Annapolis. When you decided to form this commission or the review board, what is your thought process? Obviously, it's going to change as it develops, but of the authority of this board at the end, are they able to subpoena? Is it a punitive type of a thing, or are they just a recommendation? And if it is a recommendation, where does it go from a recommendation?
So we are still forming it. So my belief will be recommendations that we move forward with, but it is another toolkit that we need. So transparency is at the root of everything. And if we can't get information to the public, if people feel that they can hide things, we can't be effective, and we can't move the city forward. Our police officers have a tough job. I'm not saying that it's probably the toughest job in America right now, but I think that they appreciate that fact that they can lay it all out there for all of us to see, and that we can sort of make decisions and not make the mistakes that we've made in the past and in other municipalities.
Okay. And I guess for Will Rowell, what do you figure the time frame is under the best circumstances, what are you thinking that this could be? When could we see a civilian review board actually come into place, provided that the council approves it and everything else? Because we do have an election coming up, and that could, as things happen to do in Annapolis, throw everything up into a topsy-turvy.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not an elected official. So I actually work on the kind of nuts and bolts of the construct, and hopefully ensure its fidelity. And right now, the most important part, I think, where we are right now, all of us, is ensuring that the actual original intent and purpose of it remains intact, so that it's not watered down, and also that it's not something that's rushed through for politics or anything else. And I can assure you, I'm most confident that the mayor is not compelled to do this because of political reasons. I think the timing is right to get some of these changes in. It's nothing new. We've been working on it. Our police chief, who's on the call right now, is an example of some of those changes. So to answer your question about a timeline, we obviously don't want it to happen 2 years from now. We don't want it to happen a year from now. And I referenced the fact that I'm not a policymaker because I do want to defer to the expertise of our council persons and our mayor to be sure that the entire legislative process is sound and takes place. So I'm not sure. My hope is it won't be 6 months from now, but it's a priority, so we'll push it as fast as we can.
Okay.
And I made a commitment to get this done, and I don't make these decisions around politics. They exist on their own. Whether they make me popular or not make me popular, I do what I believe is the right thing. This is the right thing to do, and this is the right thing for this town, and it's especially, the right thing for this country at this moment. So I will get it done as I committed. I've got a chip on my shoulder where people say that I don't do the things I say I'm going to do. I promise you we will get it done in this term.
And if I can follow up with the chief, what is, in your experience with 40 years of law enforcement, what is the difference, between an internal affairs investigation versus a civilian review board? Does that typically go to internal affairs first, or a civilian review board first? Or how does the process work? And knowing that it's not specific to Annapolis because we don't know what it is, but in general, how does it work, and what's the difference between the two? Yes,
by law, one of the considerations that will come up during this process by law, there's a law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights that's enacted by the legislature. Every agency in the state of Maryland, municipal police department, is bound by the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights. The vast majority of them anyway. And so to answer your question, it goes to internal affairs first. And once they have investigated the case and made a finding, either sustained, not sustained, or unfounded. Once they make the decision, then the case goes to civilian review. Now, civilian review can concur, or they can disagree with the findings, and then the final arbiter would be the police chief. And he or she, as it's generally done, I'm not saying that's how it's going to be done in Annapolis, but how it's generally done is the police chief is the final arbiter. The decision made by the Civilian Review Board is not bound by the internal affairs file. In fact, that's the whole purpose. It gives a second set of eyes, and the way we're going to do it correctly in Annapolis. We're going to make sure that whoever serves on the Civilian Review Board is trained in our policy, trained in the law. They're going to have an understanding of the law enforcement officer Bill of Rights and what that entails. And then they'll be able to make a decision based on, being armed with all that information. And then it gives us transparency, as the mayor and Will Rouse said, that I can stand before the public and the mayor can stand before the public. Will Rouse can stand before the public and say whatever decision was made, the citizens of Annapolis had a say-so in the police department. And I think that's the most important part of Civilian Review Board. It assures the citizens that we're not operating in a silo, and that what we do will be revealed to them. I think one of the biggest part of American policing is that the reason why the public doesn't trust us and the public has problems with our decision making is because we're a mystery. And what I like to see happen in Annapolis is that what we do is demystified. The only real knowledge that most people have is what they hear or media portrayals of police. And what the Civilian Review Board would do, it would bring the community inside to see why police do what they do, identify mistakes or problems with things that they do. I'm hoping that when this Civilian Review Board is formed, we'll have school teachers, we'll have government workers, we'll have lawyers, we'll have people from all walks of life, truck drivers. We'll have people, just everyday hardworking people who want to make sure that the police are accountable to provide good public safety and that they have a voice in the decisions that, in many decisions that the police department makes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question for both Mayor Buckley and Chief Jackson. Your counterparts at the county, this morning, we sort of put the question to them about, the county does not, as you know, doesn't have a civilian review board, and both kind of expressed doubts about how that might, would they actually do it? They both said kind of no, that they like the system that they currently had. I know that the city and the county do have a very good relationship, both generally and both police departments, but is there any, I guess, issue with that in terms of the city sort of moving forward with something that might be somewhat different from the city, from the county? I know that the police departments are different, but that that could sort of change, in some way that you might see.
I think William Rowell has been involved a little bit in their process. He has some knowledge of it. They have an excellent police chief. Stuart Pittman is always on the side of justice and right. They have obviously a much bigger, it's not apples to apples. They have a much bigger jurisdiction, and they already have a lot of layers in place for them. But I know that it's always been sort of there on the back burner, and it is something. There's something in motion. I'm not up to date with it. Will might have a bit more knowledge.
Yeah, I can say that. Per the mayor's comment, it's kind of tough to compare the two in terms of the Civilian Review Board or things of that nature. Number one, because of the county's breadth, like the actual size of the county and all the extenuating variables. But I will say that in terms of the traction and the work that they've been doing around housing and other things, I know that our county executive, much like our mayor, is intent on fulfilling very, very meaningful things for the citizens of Anne Arundel County and the city of Annapolis. So having said that, I know that they've had conversations, and I know that it's again, this process, it isn't who does it first or who's getting credit for utilizing this name. It is the utility of actually doing it. And I know I can't speak for the county or the state or for our president, but I do know that right here we are responding to what has been elevated from the citizens of Annapolis. And So the mayor is responding to exactly that. Again, he will interface and continues to interface with our county executive and the county police chief, who we all have a great relationship with, Chief Altamara. But remembering that he and we are responsible for ensuring that we have a safe Annapolis right now.
And one other question for Mayor Buckley. A couple of years ago, Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell-Charles introduced a bill that is not this. It is similar. It's a sort of a police advisory bill that didn't really go anywhere. But there were a lot of questions from the council about, would the board be subject to Open Meetings Act? How would they be chosen? Things like that. I know that probably will be decided down the line when legislation ideally is drafted. But I don't know. Is that something that you sort of looked at as a way to sort of try to avoid, or I guess an example of how to not do this type of process?
Alderwoman Pindell-Charles is head of public safety. She's done a commendable job so far. I'm sure we're going to get the same questions as we move forward in this process from the council. It is something that we're used to, and I think, it's all about checks and balances, and I'm expecting a similar situation. But I think that we're at a different point in America now when it comes to transparency and making sure that you're doing things right and that some of the old practices do not continue. And so I think that we have a city council that is sensitive to that. And so I'm sure that they will be very helpful on moving this forward. And we have to go to another protest now at City Dock. If I could just wrap it up. Is that okay? Any other questions? Well, really appreciate you guys giving us some time. I want to thank Chief Jackson, William Rowell, and thank you for being here today.
This has been an update from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And be sure to subscribe to our daily news brief podcast, which is delivered every Monday through Friday to your phone or device at 7 a.m.